Pregnancy is always an exciting time for a couple, and in this case it's no exception. As they go about their business preparing for their child's arrival, the baby is developing at a startling rate. One major area of growth during the first 4 or 5 months of development is the diaphragm. This is a sheet of muscle and fibrous tissue that separates the thorax and the abdomen, and it is involved in numerous essential processes, most notably efficient respiration. The diaphragm originates from a structure called the septum transversum, which separates the thoracic and abdominal cavities during the early stages of development. This separation is not complete, however, and 2 large openings, the pericardioperitoneal canals, connect the 2 cavities. As development progresses, crescent-shaped structures, known as the pleuroperitoneal folds, project into the caudal ends of the canals. These pleuroperitoneal folds expand with time and fill the canals. The pleural and peritoneal cavities are thus separated. This process of development can be seen in this diagram. After the membranes have finished expanding, myoblasts originating in the body wall penetrate the membranes to form the muscular part of the diaphragm, seen on the far right diagram here. As can be seen in this diagram, growth of the muscular portion of the diaphragm continues until essentially the entirety of the initial pleuroperitoneal membrane is covered in muscular tissue. As can also be seen here, the crura of the diaphragm form at this point in development, originating from the mesentery of the esophagus. Sadly, all has not been going as planned. There has been a problem with the baby discovered following birth. The child has a condition known as congenital diaphragmatic hernia. This means that the diaphragm has not developed normally. The most common form of this affliction is posterior lateral defect of the diaphragm, occurring in 1 in 2,500 births. In this case, the pleuroperitoneal membranes have not fused correctly with the other tissue of the diaphragm. In 85 to 90% of cases, and as observed in this diagram, the defect occurs on the left-hand side. It is speculated that this is because the membrane on the right-hand side developed earlier than that on the left. Fusion is normally complete by the 6th or 7th week of development. If this is not the case, developing abdominal viscera, including the intestinal loops, stomach, spleen, and potentially some parts of the liver, may enter the thoracic cavity via the gap in the diaphragm known as the foramen of Bogdalek. This leads to compression of the lungs, leading to hyperplasia and to anterior dislocation of the heart. The foramen of Bogdalek can be seen in this diagram, labelled here as the posterior lateral defect of the diaphragm. In this picture we can see 2 examples of posterior lateral defect. Both are on the left-hand side, as with most cases. On the left-hand picture we can see that the liver has fully passed through into the thorax. On the right-hand picture, the intestines and stomach have passed through, but the liver has stayed below. Alternatively, a condition known as eventration of the diaphragm may have occurred. This is less common than posterior lateral defect, but is broadly similar. In this condition, the diaphragm forms more completely than in the case of posterior lateral defect, but the musculature that does develop is still defective. The developing abdominal viscera are still able to herniate the diaphragm, forming an aponeurotic pouch which balloons into the thorax. Again, this leads to compression and hyperplasia of the lungs, and anterior dislocation of the heart. This effect can be seen in this slide, where the intestine has herniated into the thoracic cavity in a pouch of diaphragmatic tissue. Little is known about the cause of these defects, although a number of factors have been thought to be linked. Most widely recognised of these is a lack of vitamin A intake by the mother during pregnancy. Another consideration is that trisomy may have occurred on chromosome 11.